Hey everyone, welcome to conversation number 26 of the Kristof Lewis podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm so excited for my guest today. He's the one and only Chris Harder. If you don't know who he is already, he's an entrepreneur, a fellow motivator, a fellow podcaster, and he's just an all-around great guy. I'm really excited for him to be here today, and I can't wait to speak with him. Chris, thanks so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, Kristof, for sure, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty cool concept, I'd like to say myself, if I do say so, because I was very, I don't know, I haven't never done this before, and I never liked the interview technique where you just had all these interview questions that you had to get knocked out. So this has worked best for me because I just like talking to people. So, we were kind of emailing about it, and I appreciate you being here today. But a lot of people do know who you are, but for those that don't know who you are, I just want to knock out like a real quick intro, like who is Chris Harder, and then maybe we can get into some things from there.
Yeah, so I'll go super high level, and then you can do a deep dive on any part you want. How's that?
Sounds great, man.
All right, awesome. So Midwest, born and raised in Wisconsin, and the really cool thing about coming from the Midwest is you get some really great traits, like hard work ethic, good morals, good family values, things that really are good foundational items that keep you centered. And then if you can take those things and move to one of the coasts where all the action is happening,
sure,
that's kind of the perfect combo. So that's what we did. Midwest born and raised, found my wife there. We moved out to LA here and rolled up our sleeves and decided to pursue our dreams. Now, it hasn't always been as, elevator pitch as I just made it that way, because
of course,
some of the key moments in my life during that span was kicked out of college, got into the car business. That's where I learned sales and leadership. And I feel like if you can learn sales and leadership, you can write your ticket anywhere.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to agree with you there.
Into the big mortgage boom. And so then we took, I wanted to get into that as well. And that's where I got my toes into banking. And I literally talked my way into getting that job. Yeah. That's a story that we'll do a deep dive on. And it was there that I became one of the fastest rising executives at the world's biggest international bank. And that was awesome for like 8 years until all of a sudden the recession hit. Mm-hmm. And I spent the next year flying around, closing down branches, laying people off one by one by one. And it was one of the absolute lowest points of my life. And then it became my turn to choose a severance package or a demotion of a demotion of a demotion of a demotion. And I said, I'll take the severance because I'm miserable and something needs to change. Yeah. And so I took the severance. Now here was the catch. Because I was in my 20s and because I thought this was going to last forever, I lived way beyond our means. And so we had to take that huge multi-six-figure severance package and put all of it towards paying off debts and starting from zero. Matter of fact, starting below zero, selling the giant home we had just built, all the cars, everything, and getting rid of the silliness in life and stripping myself of false value that I had built up to that point. And sitting and saying, okay, if I've stripped myself of this false identity, how do I really want to show up in life? And that took a few years to figure out. It's not like it was an overnight answer.
No, none of this is overnight. Absolutely not. I know you said, you explained it real quick. It's super expedited at this point. You've done 1 million of them. I know you've been on 1 million podcasts and you've spoke 1 million times. But definitely the huge thing to take away from here, I mean, you've said a great amount of points already, but it doesn't happen overnight. And I think you're a perfect example of that, as well as one of the many reasons I wanted to have you on here. So I'm glad you hit all of those things.
Thank you. And so it was during that time of rebuilding where I got to build actually a life around what I wanted to do and learn some even more lessons, unfortunately. But we came out the other side.
Sure.
Absolutely freaking golden. And I love sharing that entire path, that entire story, because whether you're young and you're scared that college is not for you or you're about to get kicked out, or whether you're in your 20s or 30s and you're managing your finances wrong, or whether you are in your 30s or 40s and you've ended up in a career and you're saying, how did I get there?
Yeah.
And whether you're at a point in life where you're like, this is not me, this is not what I pictured, how do I start over again? I've been through all of those different stages and it all turns out okay. And so, the value of podcasts and shows like this is that you get to talk about those things and light anybody else up that might be going through something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you said it as you just said it. That is why I want you on here, because I myself, as many people know that already listen, I'm 30 years old myself, so I'm like right in that. Well, I went to college. I dropped out of college. I just got out of the military after almost a decade. That wasn't for me. And now I'm in a transitional phase. And all along every single one of these steps, I felt just as you felt. I felt lost. I felt, am I making the right decision? Am I going to be okay? Am I going to make it through it? Is this the right choice for my family? Now we're expecting a baby, like all these crazy things, like, should I make this decision? And, it's so tough, but you're a living, breathing example of somebody, and you did it with your wife. She did all these transitional stuff with you. You guys did it together, and you made it through it. You had all these different, you were a banker, you did all this. Wasn't for you. Here you are now, and you're talking about it, and retrospectively it's really fun and easy to look back on, but when you're going through these things at the time, it's definitely not fun, and it doesn't always look like you're going to see the end or the light at the end of the tunnel. So for you to describe that and be able to constantly emit that positivity and show this example all the time, I think is very awesome for you to do.
Thank you. I've noticed this trend with a lot of people that are absolutely crushing it in life right now is they've all had to go through this season. They've all had to go through this phase, and it's something in them. It's built a set of tools inside of them that they then leverage to lead an extraordinary life. It's funny because as looking at you right now, I notice down by your side you have a bunch of books there.
Oh, yeah.
One of them by my good friend Lewis Howes, where he describes his journey. How he was living on his sister's couch, and he was down and out, he was broke, and he was miserable. And in that moment, he built his set of tools to become who he is today.
It's
a beautiful journey in whatever muck you're stuck in right now.
Yeah, and it reminds me, you said a little bit earlier when you're kind of blasting through your intro, you were saying something about failures, and you were saying, unfortunately I had to experience some of this stuff, and I know some of those things that we unfortunately experienced at the time turn out to be great things. And I just had a podcast with a good friend of mine, Jordan Olson, and we talked about when you're going through life and you're hitting all this resistance, like it sucks when you're going through it. But typically after you get through that resistance, it's that resistance that seems so hard at the time that forges you, that creates the story that is you, that allows you to better approach greater resistance in the future, because like if you don't go through any resistance the first time you hit that resistance, or something's difficult for you or hard for you, you have no idea how to deal with it. But I don't know. And he was a school teacher for your background. He's 11th grade chemistry teacher. So I was asking him about how kids are raised and if they're not seeing resistance. And he said these kids are growing up and they're not seeing a lot of resistance in their life. They're having things handed to them, at least in his sector, in his where he works. I'm sorry.
In his district.
Absolutely, yeah, in his district. So this is evolving into people that are, as you said, going to college, switching careers down the road, and I think people are more apprehensive to do what they love, to switch out of careers or change their goals, change their complete trajectory because they haven't forged this adversity, because they haven't had a lot of resistance. So I don't know.
I understand what it feels like to wake up and be in that position.
Yeah.
But if you're in your 20s, if you're in your 30s, heck, even if you're in your 40s, you have so much time to reinvent yourself.
I think so too.
Willing to give up some of the stupid things that you're hanging on to that prevent you from reinventing yourself, you have so much time to do it, where if you just suck it up for a year or 2 years and get rid of your ego so that you can shed yourself of a few things that are stopping you from reinventing yourself and go be who you want to be, then the rest of your damn life, you're going to live extraordinarily because you took the time to take a step back and get a running start.
Sure, absolutely. It's like, what is this saying? You got to pull the arrow back before you shoot the arrow. And I see it all the time, but I actually do really enjoy that quote because I see that a huge part. Again, like going back to like me getting out of the Navy, like the 10 years was a solid time where I built up a solid foundation. So whatever like your job is, if you feel like you have a solid foundation and you don't want to step into another career because you're like, oh, I'm afraid I don't want to take like a lesser position here, or I'm afraid to be an entrepreneur because I'm not going to be making peanuts when I start, like, it requires that. More often than not, it's going to require you to step back. And then you brought up a good point, your ego, like being able to like swallow your pride, have that humility, and being like, I understand that this is what I have to do. I have to step back. I have to pull the arrow back to be able to shoot farther. So that's awesome, man.
Your ego is your greatest overhead. I preach about this all the time. And it's true. Like, think about it. Your ego will cause you to buy things that you should not yet buy. And then you don't have the money to put it where you should be putting it, right? So your ego is going to cost you money. Your ego will cause you to invest in shiny opportunities that are not really good opportunities. Yeah. Your ego will cause you to speak up when you shouldn't, therefore costing you a relationship.
Sure.
And it'll also cause you to not speak up when you should because you're afraid of what someone might think of you. Your ego will cost you more than any bad investment every single time. And when you can learn, and this is my life's greatest journey, so this is why I can speak to it. When you can learn to mitigate ego, when you can learn to set it aside and manage it, that is when you get rid of your single largest expense in life, and everything else becomes more efficient, and you get the great big payoffs that you've been wondering, when is it my time? When do I get my break? It's when you learn to set ego aside, because it's always going to be your greatest overhead. And so this goes towards when somebody is sitting there and saying, well, I know I need to, find a way to find the money to start my business, but I'm not going to sell my truck. I love my truck.
Exactly.
Or I'm not going to sell this fancy car, or I'm not going to go live in a smaller house. Yeah. My family likes it here. Listen, you're just feeding your ego, and you're not doing what it takes to get the step back, to get the running start. And that's your choice.
Yeah.
To each their own. But I know what reward is on the other side if you're willing to set that damn ego aside.
Yeah, not a lot of people can do that. And I think one of the biggest steps is actually figuring out that your ego is one of your biggest combatants, like realizing that that's what's holding you back. It's the ignorance to the fact of not even knowing that something's holding you back, and how if you can't identify something like a roadblock in front of you, if you can't identify that, then you don't know how to formulate a plan to combat it. Because once you get to the point where you're doing some self-alignment and you figure out, okay, well, I have a big ego, like, I don't want to sell my truck, or I don't want to downgrade my house or my apartment or whatever it is in your life. If you can't figure that out, then you can't formulate a plan, and then you're never going to move forward. So I think, I don't know, like, how, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like, how does somebody even define if they know that something within themselves is being a kind of combating what they want to do? But I think if they're already thinking that they want to do something bigger in their life, that they're going to look, or hopefully realize that they need to look in at their self and define like what they want in their life before they go out and demand it from the life around them that they want.
So I've got a little exercise that can help people with that.
Sure.
Whenever you find yourself saying, well, I can't do this, or well, I can't do that, I invite you to challenge yourself and play the why game. Mm-hmm. And the why is this. Look in a mirror or get out a piece of paper and ask yourself, when you say, I can't do blank, ask yourself why. And then you're going to come up with some surface level answer, and ask yourself why again. And you're going to come up with a deeper answer, and you're going to say, well, why not again? Well, why not again? And if you are willing to why yourself to death, you'll actually get to that root cause of the problem.
Essentially, yeah.
In this example you and I are using, well, really the only why is that I'm not willing to look silly in front of my neighbors who think I'm doing well, or something like that.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it, is not only like, hey, I don't want to sell the truck because I love the truck. In that example, it's because I care about what other people think. And oh my God, do I see that's just a huge issue with a lot of people, is they care way too much about what people think. And I understand, like, that's a huge part of today's society. Like, social media, we're putting like highlight reels out there and all this stuff, and people look around like, they're like, oh my God, this guy or this girl has all this stuff, their life is perfect. Why don't I have that? So I don't want to give up my stuff when I'm working, I'm busting my ass to get all this stuff. I don't want to, digress my life so that I can propel it. And I don't know, obviously, all the books I've been reading and people, talking to people like yourself, you really, really have to be able to figure that out, that to not compare yourself and just worry about yourself. I talk about it a lot. And it's really hard to do because it's all around us. It's so easy to talk to people. It's so easy to see other people's stories. But yeah, I would definitely recommend people to just worry about yourself and not be so materialistic. But again, it can be hard to identify.
Yeah, and another answer to your question, because you said, well, how do people identify this in themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
One of the things you need to take a really hard look at is your current tribe and ask yourself.
Glad you bring that up.
If I didn't have these things, if I didn't do this job, if I didn't think this way, would they still be my friends? And if the answer is no, or if the answer is maybe not, then you have the wrong damn friends. Because if who you really are inside is not who they're friends with, you have the wrong damn friends, and all they're going to do is keep you in this box that you're already in, and they're going to rob you of being free to make the choices that will actually give you a life that you really want. And so you absolutely have to ask yourself that question about your tribe, because we start out life with these tribes by default. In other words, when you're kids, you don't choose who you go to school with. You don't choose who your neighbors are. You don't choose who your parents know.
Yeah.
And you start to grow up with this tribe by default. And then you kind of end up in a college. You kind of end up in a job, and that's more tribe by default. You got coworkers, and you got people you share dorms with and all that. And it's really not your fault up to that point. But then somewhere in adulthood, when someone says to you on a show like this or in person, they say, why don't you start choosing a tribe with intention?
Mm-hmm.
No longer a tribe by default. Why don't you start choosing a tribe by intention? That becomes the moment that it now becomes your fault, right? Because now you've been woken up. Now you get to say, wait a minute, why aren't I choosing people that will let me go where I want to go? Why aren't I choosing people that will cheer me on instead of saying, oh, that's okay, maybe it wasn't meant to be?
Yeah.
Like, you need to go out there and seek and assemble a tribe that is going to push you where you're going, not condone you're playing small or making poor decisions.
Yeah, and it's just like you said, it's awakening. It goes with everything we've already previously said, like being able to figure out that that's an issue in the first place, right? So this awakening, you may not have realized that these people around you are toxic. And you talk about friends, but God, we've all seen it in relationships too. I mean, I've been with people in the past, my wife laughs at me now that how could you be with that person? And retrospectively, it's hilarious too, but holy crap, like you look back and you reflect, you're like, how was I with that person? It was really limiting my potential. I was with these friends or whoever it is, but I think you just need to be able to look in all avenues of your life and be like, what's holding me back? What's not allowing me to be myself in front of them? You were talking about friends, keeping your friends, building your tribe. If you're worried about doing something or being your true self, who you are in front of these friends, then if that's who you're worried about, get them out. If your spouse or your whoever your relationship is holding you back, get them out. And I think that's even harder. And not to say that any of this is easy. None of it's easy, especially if you've had these friends for a long time, or it's hard. You get emotions all come up into the scenario as well, and it's really hard to cut friends out of your life. I don't know. How would you I know you're already about to answer, but how do you cut people out of your life like that? That's tough sometimes.
Yeah, listen, I've been there, done that. And here's the thing. You're never cutting people out of your life. Or let me rephrase this. You're never leaving people behind.
Sure.
Because you always have the choice to come along with you. But here's the problem. A lot of times,
they don't.
It's not right timing for them to make the same choice as you, or they don't have the same goals, or they don't have the same mission as you. And so all you're doing is following your truth.
Sure.
All you're doing is being authentic by going where you're going as fast as you can, setting the pace and setting the height. They have the option to come along. A lot of times they're choosing not to.
Yeah.
And so you're never leaving people behind. It's always their choice. I want you to think about, my wife has a great analogy. She says, if you wanted to get healthy, and you're going through a buffet, instead of putting the garbage on the plate first, what if you put all the good stuff on the plate first, and it kind of crowded out the room that was for the garbage? It's the same thing. As soon as you wake up to this and say, wait a minute, I want a better life, I know where I'm going, then think of the same thing with friends. Go out and start finding incredible human beings to put on the plate first, and that's just going to naturally crowd out those who don't want to participate in this new healthy life where you are going. It's the same thing.
Yeah, and that's a great analogy. So maybe someone would beg the question, well, Chris, okay, well, you're saying I need to go out there and I need to find these friends, but I've never found these friends before. How do I find these friends? So maybe, well, I like to do X, Y, Z. This is what I want to be successful in. So I'm going to, it's like I said, it's so easy. Instagram, boom, hashtag, I want to do X, Y, Z. I go find with them, network with them, and then you can meet up with them hopefully in real life too. Build meetings, that meetup app or whatever it is, like build what you want to see around you, right?
Yeah, listen, there's no excuses in this day and age with
That's
the
what
internet.
I'm saying, yeah.
Instagram, you can literally reach out to people, slide in their DM, and ask how that you can add value to them. Hey, I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
I noticed this very specific project you're working on. Super cool, aligns with my values. I'm good at X, Y, and Z. I was wondering if I could add value to your project. That's just one of many examples. The more that you give, and this goes back to this whole concept of giving is the secret to everything you want in your life, the more that you give to other people, the more that you are going to build relationship capital with the people that you want relationships with. Lori and I have been hyper intentional about this, and it doesn't happen by default. You must choose to go out and build this relationship capital. We've been hyper intentional about it, and it has resulted in a circle of influence of the most incredible human beings on the planet right now.
Yeah.
Because we set out to say, I like what they're doing. How could I add value to them? And they're so appreciative of the value that eventually we started to go from, acquaintances to peers to friends to total homies.
Yeah.
And that is the process on how it grows.
Yep. Starts small and it grows into something absolutely beautiful. It really does. And I think that's an amazing example of all that. And that's one thing I'm trying to do here. I've said it a million times. I want to meet people like you. I want to meet people like every single guest I've had on here, but not as well. I always, at the same time, simultaneously, I want to learn and I want to share that information. So not only am I learning from you now, everybody that's listening or watching is able to learn as well. And then I want them to go, listen to this conversation and then go and implement the same exact thing for themselves with whatever they want to do.
Well, thank God for people that have mediums like this, that you've put on, because
Sure.
Without having these conversations out loud, then people don't know. They wonder what's wrong with them. They wonder why they're not getting their break. They wonder when it's their turn.
Yeah.
And the answer is, it's always your turn. Right now, your break is on the other side of really tough decisions. We have a good friend. Her name is Danette May. And Danette, ironically, she doesn't live in LA here, but she happens to be downstairs in the house here right now. And she always says this. She says, your success will be in direct correlation with the number of tough conversations you're willing to have or the number of tough decisions you're willing to make. Think about that. Your success will be in direct correlation with the number of tough conversations you're willing to have or the number of tough decisions you're willing to make. Most people aren't willing to make the tough decisions.
Yeah.
And that's why they're on the wrong side of the breakthrough.
Absolutely.
They're so much closer than they think. They're just not willing to tear that damn Band-Aid off because they don't want that little moment of hurt.
It's tough, and it's kind of like we were talking earlier in the podcast about facing that resistance, right? I mean, it's a lot of times I think, this is my sole opinion, but when people don't put themselves in the front, these difficult questions or these difficult opportunities, making them try to level up in their job, trying to get a higher opportunity, they don't want to do it because they know it's going to be hard, and the fear of failure, and that's hard to overcome. But when you challenge yourself, and you face all this resistance, then you're gonna, you may be risking more and you might be facing that fear of failure, but you're gonna be propping yourself up higher. You may have even better reward,
Mm-hmm. So what's so funny? Notice we keep dancing around the same subjects because you just brought fear of failure.
Exactly.
Fear of failure in front of who?
Yeah, well, others, right?
Yeah. You got the wrong damn friends.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, and it's
cheer you on when you fail.
Yeah.
They should pick you up when you fail. There should be zero feeling of judgment in front of your friends. You should be able to dance naked and talk about your biggest insecurity in front of your friends, or you have the wrong friends.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring it up. It's all tied together. Yeah, it's you said it all. It all ties together because it's. And it's funny because this is conversation number 26 now, and these things come up all the time, and that's the beauty of having this organic conversation is because I like to see, I don't want to plan things because I like to see what comes up. I want to see, Chris has had this journey, he's done these things in his life. Well, let's get into his mind, and I don't want to cue him up for anything. I want to see what comes out naturally. And it's funny to me always, it's very curious to see these things coming up. The resistance, building your tribe, pushing yourself harder, putting yourself up where you might fail, but that's fine because, as the saying goes, if you don't try, or if you don't not facing failure, then you're probably not pushing yourself. And if you're not facing failure, then probably that might be a good indicator where you can push yourself harder, right? So all these things come up, and they come up probably every episode, almost every episode.
So that's a clue.
Absolutely. I would hope
that's
that,
a clue.
Absolutely. And I would hope people can, I'd like to, honestly, it's funny you bring this book up, and I had it here unintentionally. That's funny. But I like how he wrote about, people he had conversations with, for his podcast. And I'd like to do the same thing with here too. So hopefully if people don't listen to every single episode, then I'd be able to put that together and, put out, what did Chris say? What did everybody say? So
here's what's interesting. You want to know how Lewis became so successful? Because I know him so intimately, I know all of this. This is what we talk about on a regular basis. He wakes up every day with the intention of, how can I go serve somebody? Mm-hmm. And he has served so many damn people in such a great way, including the people he wanted to meet and have on his show. Mm-hmm. That naturally, the side effect was that they wanted to serve him back. And that is his secret to success. He is the best networker, not in terms of the cheesy networking, let's meet and collaborate. He is the best networker I've ever met in my life in terms of listening for what you say you need when you have a conversation, storing it in the back of his head, and then saying, who do I know that I could connect them with? What do I know that I could help them with? And that is, you build that relationship capital and all the doors open up for you.
Absolutely. People helping people. That was a perfect example of people. I mean, he's helping people and he's networking people and he just truly wants to help people. And I think that's what it stems from is, finding something, he was passionate about and then connecting people with whatever they're passionate about and helping each other. Because Lord knows you can't do it by yourself. I mean, you went through a lot of this stuff with your wife. I'm currently going through a lot of stuff with my wife with the transition and, both getting new jobs, kid on the way, all this stuff that, you've already gone through a little bit yourself, a little bit different, of course. But it's tough. But when you have people like that in your life that are genuinely trying to help you, that are the right tribe, and you're with the right people, your wife, my wife, the friends that I've kept in my life, it does make it a lot easier.
Yeah, it truly does. And that's, here's another thing. It's always going to be changing. Who was in your 2015 might not meant to be in your 2018.
Yeah.
And that's okay. My friend Tim Story always says that. Who was in your 2015 might not be meant to be in your 2018. And we have to accept that. Just because you graduated 6th grade with somebody and they were your absolute best friend doesn't mean that they are good for you now at this stage in your life.
Yeah, and you said it earlier. Things are always coming up, but you said it earlier. Everybody's at different stages of their life, and you have to be able to be okay with that. Like, this might be the right time for you to go this way because you're pushing this hard, and it just might not be the right time for this friend. And do you have to, we were talking about cutting people out. You don't necessarily, maybe in my opinion, have to cut them out completely, but maybe you just limit your interaction with them, right? Especially, it can be tough with friends and family to be able to cut them out. But limit your interaction and understand that we all have different paths. And, they're all important to us, so you have to respect it at the same time. But hopefully, if you've picked your tribe well, they reciprocate that and they understand that, your path is what you so choose, and you have to go this way right now.
Yeah, and you know what else is funny? You don't have to look at it as cutting people out. I already gave the crowding them out on the plate analogy.
Yeah.
But I want you to think of it this way. These people, because people always ask, what about my friends? What about my family? The real close people.
Yeah.
Find the beautiful thing they offer you. Enjoy them for those things. Mm-hmm. But make darn sure you spend an equal or more amount of time finding other people that serve you in your gaps. So if you have a friend who's not a big thinker, but boy, they're the one that makes you laugh more than anyone else, enjoy some moments of laughter with them and go find a big thinker to add to the tribe as well.
Sure.
And naturally, now that you're balancing two people, you're going to have a little bit less time with this person because you're having a little more time with this person. And it all works out to tip the scales in your favor when you start looking at it that way.
Yeah, that's just a great way to say that. And, I never thought about it, so thank you. That's very cool.
The term never sounds very good, but this term is so good, and it's this. When I was in Costa Rica a few years ago, a friend of ours, Lindsay, she talked about how she collects people. And every time I hear collect people, I think, it's a weird term, but it's so true. I have to think about it.
Yeah.
Instead of relying on one person to be this perfect version for what you need, which is so unrealistic, right? You're just setting yourself up for letdown after letdown after letdown. Collect people. Find the ones that make you laugh. Spend a little time with them. Find the ones that make you love. Spend a little time with them. Find the ones that make you work harder. Spend a little bit of time with them. Find the ones that support your dreams. Spend some time with them. Collect people along this journey in life.
No, it's great. And I mean, because if you think about it again on the inverse, I like to, what you're asking from somebody else, you have to look into yourself. I mean, what if somebody from the outside was looking in and be like, well, Chris doesn't have everything that I want as a friend in life, so I'm just not going to talk to him. Like, that's ludicrous when you think about it that way. So think about it from other people's shoes, and when you're looking out for other people, you're like, yeah, that person makes me laugh. Absolutely, that's a good friend. I'm going to keep them in my life. That's awesome. Spend some time with them. So yeah, you pick a little here, you pick a little there, and that's absolutely okay. But you do want to pick the people that are not toxic to you.
Yep, exactly. You nailed it.
Yeah. So I was reading something that you had written, I think it was on Instagram a few days ago, about momentum. That's one thing I wanted to talk about because I think it's vastly important. It's so important. It's one thing that I have noticed actually it's one of the most important things that I've noticed from an earlier age. And I like giving the example of going to the gym, and it can be used for anywhere, but I noticed that when I was going to the gym consistently, that I had no problem going to the gym consistently. But once I stopped, holy hell, was it really hard to start going again. And I say that, I use that as a variable. It can be, I'm not used to working hard at my job or whatever it is, whatever I do. It's really hard to get in the habit. It all ties together again of working hard. But once I go to work and I'm like, I'm going to do my best today, or like Lewis woke up, he's like, what am I going to do today? How am I going to help somebody else? Once you get in the habit of doing that every single day, it's much easier to keep that.
Yeah, it's true. So what I had posted, what you're referencing is, I said momentum is the hardest thing to get, the most valuable thing to have, and easiest thing to lose.
Yes.
And think about that. Really is like nothing opens more doors and grants more dreams than momentum. But it is so hard to build momentum. And it is so easy, unfortunately, to lose momentum. And that's why you need to be focused on build, like packing the snowball and adding more snow and adding more snow and starting to roll it down the hill, and it's getting heavier and it's not really going on its own. And finally, there becomes this tipping point where it starts to roll down the hill on its own, and you just have to run and tap it and tap it and tap it to keep going down the hill. That's the momentum. But then it hits a tree or picks up too much snow, where it's very easy to lose that momentum somewhere on that path. And so you have to appreciate momentum while you have it, and you have to work your tail off to get it. And there's too many people that stop short of creating momentum.
Yeah, before that ball starts rolling, before, in your scenario, you're pushing the ball of snow, and you're like, oh man, I'm pushing as hard as I can every single day, and I keep on stacking more and more snow, or I keep on doing more things. I'm meeting these people, I'm working hard, I'm staying up late studying, I'm getting up early, I'm going to the gym, and my life just isn't where I want it to be. And then a lot of times you just quit before before you hit it, and it's such a crazy phenomenon,
Yes, you're cold, your hands are wet, your arms are tired. Screw it, this snowball's not going to work, right? And everybody stops short of momentum, and they wonder why their business idea didn't take off. They wonder why this didn't take off, Momentum is what you're aiming for at first, and people don't realize this. You're not aiming for anything else other than to get into momentum with your idea, get into momentum with your new habit, get into momentum with your relationship. That is the first thing you're aiming for. Then when you get there, you have to do kind of a different dance to stay in momentum.
Sure.
But that's the first thing you're looking for.
Huh. Very interesting. Yeah, that comes to mind, and it's just such an important thing that I talk about a lot. I mean, I talk about it with myself because I think it's very important to, again, I keep on bringing it up, look within and analyze yourself. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? And a lot of times when I've had those conversations with myself every day, for those wondering, Well, I say typically it's at night, you're laying there in bed and mind is racing, and I think about, okay, I like reviewing my day at that time, and, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Did I keep the things that I wanted to be consistent with? Am I maintaining that momentum? And I think that's very important for somebody to do, to want to be successful. And whatever you're doing is to be able to analyze your day, look at the gameplay, and review the film and see what you're doing right or see what you're doing wrong. Because a lot of times that I haven't been able to obtain things in my life, it's because I haven't, it's a test. If you're in college, and cater to anybody. If I didn't study enough, I didn't study every single day, so I didn't pass. Because I always say this to myself. It's a very important thing I say to myself is, it's okay to fail, but it's, for me personally, it's not okay to fail if I know I didn't try my hardest. So if I bust my own and I try as hard as I can, that's a little bit black and white, but I'm just trying to nail home the point of I'm okay with failing something as long as I know I tried as hard as I could. But I'd always beat myself up after the fact if I didn't try very hard. How do you feel about that?
Well, failure is necessary and failure is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to that whole thing of your success will be in direct proportion to how many difficult conversations or difficult decisions you're willing to make. And failure is one of those. It falls in that category.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about failure is you don't fail unless you stop trying. And I know it's so dumb and candid. Everyone's already said it.
Man, those things come up though.
True.
Yeah.
You can't dispute it. You don't fail unless you stop trying.
Sure.
And even if someone's like, well, yeah, I started a business. It was called Soup to Nuts, and it went out of business. That was failing. No, it wasn't. As long as you took lessons from that and tried another business, you haven't failed yet. If you never tried another business, now you failed.
Absolutely.
The only possible way to fail is to stop trying.
Yeah. So
everything is just feedback. It's not a failure, it's feedback.
Yep. And you sometimes you're like, oh man, I don't want to say that because it's so cliche, but I say, it's cliche for a reason. Those things are real. Like, you got to, like I said, review the game footage, review your game plan. And if you failed that business, you may have failed in that instance, but that's completely fine. But you sure as shit failed if you just didn't take anything away from it. If you didn't review why you failed, then how can you expect yourself to succeed again in another business? What are you going to do? Blindly start another business without figuring out why the first one failed? That's ludicrous.
People don't realize how often people fail. Like, I failed by getting kicked out of college, but it wasn't a failure because I took it and parlayed it into something else.
Sure.
I failed at a snack food company that I started. I failed at a cleaning company that I started. I failed at, this is interesting, I had part of a mortgage bank. I got out too early and I couldn't get along with my partner. Some could call that a failure. And to me, it's not. It was feedback, and I took it, parlayed it in this awesome life and success that I have now. So, there's no failures. There's feedback. And if people don't like the cliches, it's probably because it's triggering something inside of them that they don't want to face.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. And it's funny you mentioned all of those things. Like, you mentioned more than a handful of things that you did over your life, working at all these places. It begs the question, how did you find what you really loved? It's so many times people think that what they're doing right now is the only thing they can do and they see no way out. And I can say that because I felt that way too. I thought, God, man, my 20s are fading away. Oh, my 20s are gone. I don't know what I want to do. And one of the hardest things for me, or that was for me, and I think probably for a lot of people, is figuring out, well, yeah, Chris, you always talk about doing what you love, but I can't find it. It's really hard to find what you love and to do that. And I've had a lot of people in my life tell me that, sure, maybe I make a lot of money, but I don't like it. But I do it because I make a lot of money. And to me, that doesn't matter. I'd rather, we talk about digressing, taking a step back, pulling the arrow back. I'd rather do something that didn't pay as much that I thoroughly enjoyed going to do. So it's tough finding out what you want to do. I mean, I guess there's two things here how you could answer it. I mean, or however you want, but how did maybe you find out what you wanted to do, and then maybe what you would recommend, and that may be one and the same thing. Yeah.
Trial and error is the short answer to that.
Yeah.
You don't know what you want to do until you try a whole bunch of other things that show you what you don't want.
Yeah.
Right? But at the end of the day, I think what I would say to that is you need to, I want to make sure I don't answer this lightly.
Yeah.
How do you find what it is you want to do outside of the generic answer of trial and error? If you are unhappy right now in what you're doing, that's a sure sign that that's not the right answer.
Yep.
And the trigger that should make you say, okay, I want to go start testing some things to find the right answer. And then when you go start testing some things, that means you're going to have to give something up in order to start testing them. Yeah. It might be give up something financially. It might be give up something in terms of time and energy. Yeah. It might be give up something in some relationships. But you got to start giving some things up in order to have the extra time, energy, and bandwidth to start trying some of these things. And there's where people stop. It's like, well, I don't have time. Well, I don't have the money.
That's a huge excuse, isn't it? I don't have time. I hear that a lot.
Yes. A lot. And so you need to start going and trying these things. You got to give something up to have the bandwidth to try these things. And every time you try something, it's going to bump you, like bumper bowling. It's going to bump you back and forth into, well, that's kind of good. Maybe we go this way. Well, that's kind of good. Maybe we go this way.
Yeah.
And before you're going to find pins. But you're not going to find the pins without being bumped back and forth the whole damn way down the lane.
Yeah.
And the way that happens is if to put yourself onto that lane instead of just sitting there being miserable in what you do right now.
Yeah, that was a great answer, by the way. And that's exactly what it is. And there's another thing that I extremely, very much subscribe to this, is that do whatever you want, and if you don't like it, change it, right? Pretty simple. However, I can't stand, and this is actually a huge reason why I started this podcast, is because I worked with a lot of people throughout my life, including myself, that didn't like what they were doing. Now, I heard a lot of people that didn't like what they were doing, complained about it, and then didn't do something about it. So I always say, if you complain about your job, well, first of all, that's not really an attractive quality. Constantly complaining about, what's wrong. Well, go do something with it, or go do something about it. If your situation is a situation that you don't want, if you want to change your life, go do it. But you cannot complain about your life and then not do something about it. Like, that absolutely just starts driving me crazy. I mean, I'm sure you might agree that when people are not in a scenario or they don't have a life they want, or they don't have a job that they like, or they don't have the friends they like, if they're just willing to keep that toxicity around them and not doing anything about it, then I can't help you there. But if you're going to go out there and you're going to realize that, I don't want these things in my life and I want to better myself. Okay, I don't like my job. Well, I'm going to get up off my couch. I'm going to go figure out what I like. And you said you kind of like ping pong or bumper around and figure out what you like. That may be a little bit frustrating at times because you're like, well, this doesn't work and that doesn't work. But as you were saying that, I thought back to when you said, you're reviewing your own life and figuring out what you don't like. And if you fail at business, well, then you only fail if you don't take away from that business why you failed. So as you're going, through to these jobs, you're bumpering around to these jobs. Well, I didn't like this, but I did like this, or I didn't like this and I did like this, and you kind of formulate your path. That's why I loved your answer, because you're like, you wrapped it all up into one, like a little bit of everything that we talked about, and that's how you find your passion.
Yeah, it really is. And here's another kind of a shortcut to find it. Whatever people continue to come to you for must be what you do a good job doing. So if everyone's like, bro, I'm coming to you for my finances, I need some help. Or if people are like, hey, I'm coming to you for fashion advice, or I'm coming to you for, I need help remodeling again. Whatever people continue to come to you for must be what you're good at. And if you're good at it, you must at some level enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
And so that pattern should be the first place you explore if it's not what you're doing for a living.
Absolutely. It's so funny you say that, because I know, growing up, my dad always joked me. He's like, hey, man, you really are only do good at things that you like, whether it was school, whether it was sports, but holy crap, does it speak, that solidifies everything you just said. If you, what do you, okay, Chris, how do I find my passion? Well, what do you enjoy to do? Well, I enjoy to do X, Y, and Z. Okay. Well, that means you're probably not going to mind working on it, those long and hard hours that are most likely required to have the success that comes with that. So go do that. Figure out ways that, well, I enjoy this, so I'm going to go look at how do you make money doing that, right? I mean,
well, a lot of people get stuck on what do you like to do. I know it sounds silly, but they get stuck on it. They can't answer it.
Yeah,
that's why I changed the question to, what does everybody come to me for? And look for that pattern. And
yeah.
oh, That's right. I'm good at that.
So maybe write it down again.
I must be good at it. Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of like you were talking about earlier, like writing things down, asking yourself why, right? It's really good. Like I've talked about that too with setting goals, like writing your goals down. It's really good to see that like right in front of you, checking off the goals. How do I obtain them? Asking yourself why in your situation. But when, if people are asking me other things, asking me like, hey, Chris, can you do that? Can you do this? Make a list of that stuff and then go from there.
Yep. Totally. I love it. We're on the same path.
Hey man, another thing I saw on your Instagram, and this is not just I saw it once, obviously, you and your wife are like, boom, neck and neck, and I love it. But what I love even more than that transparency is the transparency on the level of where you talk about things aren't always great, right? And I think that goes in it's not just I talk about it a lot too, it's not just with your spouse, it's with any of these friends, with your tribe. You're not gonna agree on everything, but I just wanted to bring that up real quick. Something, I don't plan really anything, but that is one thing that I definitely saw and I wanted to mention. And I wanted to say I think it's awesome that you're doing that, because one thing I hate, we talked about Instagram being like this highlight reel, but and it's okay if you want to, I edit photos, I edit videos, obviously, but I like to have that transparency as well. And one thing that hit a huge thing with me was you talking about your relationship, and that was really important to me because I like talking about that stuff too.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Our relationship is interesting because we're both in momentum. We both have a lot of irons in the fire, like a lot of projects. We're both being pulled in a lot of directions.
Yeah.
And we both have 50-50 ownership in all of our corporations, all of our companies. And there is a real danger in two ridiculously ambitious human beings share companies together, because you can quickly go from being a couple to business partners. Now, we've been married 16 years, and to counteract that, to help fix the tendency of that happening to people, we have instituted so many little hacks because we didn't want that to happen. So I'll give you an example. People will say, why is it that, I get married, everything's fine, I start my business, I finally get it going, and all of a sudden my marriage is bad. Well, here's why. My question back to them is, did you work as hard on your relationship as you did your business the past 6 months? Think about that. Did you work as hard on your relationship as you did your business the past 6 months? And if they're honest, most of the time it's no, because here's why. You get married, you fall in love, you get married, everything's awesome, and all right, good, that's shiny. Put it on the shelf. That's isn't it? Work really hard at that, fall in love, make it shiny, and you forgot to take care of what was already on the shelf.
Yeah, true.
So Lori and I, we have mandatory, rain or shine, come hell or high water, pissed off at each other or not, dog walks every single night, and it's minimum 3 miles to 4 miles, takes an hour. And during that time, it's the change of location, the change of state, the change of energy, the moving our bodies that takes us from business partners to romantic partners again.
Yeah.
And we leave the house pissed off a lot of times, fighting about budget, projects, staff, you name it. And we never come back from that walk without having talked through it and being in a totally different energy. It's such a valuable hack. And if you don't walk, or if you don't have a dog to walk, then don't stop there. Ask yourself, what is your version of an evening dog walk that you could do with your significant other?
Yeah,
maybe it's going together, maybe for car rides, maybe it's whatever it is, right? Maybe it's listening to 1 hour of podcast together. Anything to shift your energy, shift your location, shift what's going on. Yeah. Another thing is we've got these mandatory Fridays. So during our busy seasons, we'll say, all right, on Fridays, I don't care who it is, what it is, you can't book anything past this time because we're going on Fridays. And it's having the intention of putting those things first that is what will allow you to keep working on your relationship as hard as you are working on your business. But people they forget to balance those two out. They innocently forget to balance those out, and then they wake up and sometimes it's too late.
It's tough. The work-life balance is super tough, and I'll be the first to say, in full transparency, speaking of transparency, that's been really difficult for me. I mean, I have right now a day job, and I come home and I work a long hours on the podcast doing everything myself, and we've been married for 2.5 years, so just a little bit less than you guys, but it kind of really hit home with me when you said, you formulate this great marriage and you kind of put it up on the shelf, and I almost was like, I felt so sad, like, as you said that, because I could almost see, and this has already come to light, like, we've had like, things have come up, it's been tough, and I realized I had to do a lot of that looking in on myself, as I've described a lot, and I realized, like, holy hell, like, I know I enjoy this, but man, you have to make, and it's funny, we have a dog too, a golden retriever, and we take her out and we go for a walk, and I just feel so much better about that. But it was really tough because for me, like, this is my passion, I love doing this, but it was really hard for me I need to spend time on this. I can't, I can't talk to you. And I realized, and it's kind of hard to talk about, but I realized I was neglecting certain areas of my life, specifically that area of my life. So I couldn't love more what you're saying right there. Like, especially if you're working with a spouse, but don't neglect them. Yep. And it's intentional. It's not like I intentionally was like, I don't want to spend time with you, and sometimes it's too late. Luckily, I caught it relatively early. I noticed I was doing it, but you have to, no matter if this is your passion or you love what you're working or whatever you're doing, you have to make time for those that make time for you and that you love and that you want to be with.
Yeah, so one of the easiest ways to do this, because it's like a sneak attack, right? It shows up and also you're like, wait a minute, how did I get here? So
yeah, it does.
What you don't measure won't happen. So here's the easiest thing that anybody can do. Every Sunday night, grab a notebook, grab a journal, grab a freaking Excel spreadsheet, whatever trips your trigger. And every Sunday night, list the 5 or 6 or 7 categories that mean the most to you in life. So it might be like fitness, money, business, side hustle, marriage, parenting, self-development, whatever, right? Whatever your 5, 6, 7, 8 are, list them. And then every Sunday night, go in and rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being outstanding, you couldn't have done a better job. 1 being you shit the bed, right? And by going through and rating each category on Sundays, it will stop you from letting several weeks go by where you got a bunch of 10s in one area and a bunch of 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s in the other area.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be your wake-up call. You're going to be like, whoa, this is the second week in a row that I the 4 for my workouts. All right, I can't let that happen this next week.
Yeah.
So when you visually see a trend, that's data. Yeah. That shows you where you're going, and there's no longer any surprise attacks. Now you can do something about it way earlier, because what you measure will happen, what you don't measure won't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. I really do love that. I was talking about writing down goals, and it's just another thing, writing it down and seeing it, and then being able to recognize the trend. And when you write it down and you're doing those numerical values and you're rating yourself essentially, right, which can be tough to do, but is required. If you want to be a better version of yourself, if you want to do better every single day, then the only way is you got to analyze. I mean, geez, huge companies do that, right? They analyze metrics all the time. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you work for somebody's crunching numbers, or else you're probably not going to be successful because, like you said, you're not going to be able to catch those trends. So why not do it for yourself? That's awesome.
Yeah, totally. It'll be one of the most simple ways for you to grab a hold of the categories that mean the most to you in leading a rich life. And when I mean a rich life, I mean rich in all ways. Of course, monetarily. If you follow my brand, you know I'm a big fan of that. But equal to that in love and happiness and contribution and impact and experience and everything else that you want to measure. It's the only way to lead a full circle rich life.
Absolutely. Chris, that's amazing. This has been an awesome hour. Thank you so much. Man, I've really had a great time talking with you.
I love the back and forth way that you do your show.
Yeah, I kind of started off with that. I did not by any means intend to toot my own horn. Retrospectively, it kind of came off from that, but I just wanted to say, like, I just love talking with people. I love learning from them, and then I love being able to then, in this instance, capture it and then share it with other people. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I want to learn something new from everybody I talk to. I've learned too many things to count from, so I'm really excited to go back and revisit this and take some things away and implement it to my life. And I really hope that other people would implement it in their lives as well.
Awesome. Kristof, I appreciate the platform to share these ideas. And what you're doing, the world needs, man.
Oh, I really appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you. Thanks so much.
Of course, my pleasure.
All right, Chris. See ya.
Take care.